Hey, top of the Thirsty Thursday morning to all of you. Welcome to The Sweat presented by DraftKings. I'm Emerson Lotzi. I need you to gear up because on this show, we're ripping through DFS plays and best bets around the NBA. Plus, we're diving deep into a thick 12-game NHL slate. And speaking of manly and meaty, Ross Tucker, former NFL lineman, current podcaster, current broadcaster. Top of the morning to you, you cinnamon roll loving human being.
What's up, dude? How are you?
I'm doing well. Little thrown off and disgruntled following your cinnamon rolls are greater than donuts tweet, but whatever. To each their own. That's you. This is me.
I've been dreading this all day, by the way.
It's okay. I'm glad you're here.
Question 2, you're going to be mad at me.
Yeah, I'm already prepared. You do a great job of breaking my heart on this show. We are
Sorry.
2 days away from wild card action. So Miami's going to be without Tua and Buffalo. We know that. Will Baltimore be without Lamar Jackson in Cincinnati here? A question we don't have an answer to right now. How bad do the Ravens need him in order to win this game, Ross?
Yeah, like really bad.
Okay.
I mean, I don't even think they would win the game with him, but it feels like they have no shot without him. It felt like, people thought he'd come back maybe a couple weeks ago or last week, and then it was like, okay, kind of saving it for the playoffs. I get it. But now the reports out yesterday are that doesn't look good for him to play this week. And look, I talked about this already this morning on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. People can check it out. I don't blame him, given his contractual situation, if he doesn't want to play at less than 100%. If he doesn't want to go out there and potentially make it worse before his contract expires. I get that. But I also think we need to have that conversation because it's been a long time now that he hasn't played with this. And, the truth is, Emerson, most of the guys that are out there aren't 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, you're playing Sunday night, okay, after an 18-week season, 4 weeks of the preseason, or 3 weeks of the preseason, whatever. If you're 100%, what have you been doing this whole time, bro? Nobody's on it. You shouldn't be 100%. So anyway, the answer is yes. They need Lamar Jackson to have a chance to win the game. Huntley's beat up. The Anthony Brown kid is not ready to be playing. It's a bummer. By the way, remember this, okay? When you get mad about the roughing the passer penalties or whatever, remember Skylar Thompson and maybe Anthony Brown both starting playoff games, wild card weekend. This is what they try to avoid.
Listen, you played at the highest level. How would that sit with you if you were a teammate of Lamar Jackson?
That's it. Emerson, that might be your best follow-up question ever. I like that.
Thank you.
I would be understanding. Okay. Yeah, I think that's the way to describe it. I would be understanding that he needs to do what's best for his family. Because you know what the truth is, right? Like, he grew up in Miami. He didn't grow up a Ravens fan. You know what I mean? That's his team now, but his real team is his family. His mom, I don't know if he's got a girlfriend or whatever, kids, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But that's his real I mean, you're talking about a guy that got cut 4 times, traded once, played for 5 teams in 7 years. I think you need to do what's best for you. Now, we could go down a whole different rabbit hole here because personally, if you talk to me or if I was advising him, I would have signed the contract for $133 million guaranteed. 5 years, $250 million. I don't really understand his logic for not signing it. He wants the fully guaranteed deal, but yet, what's the worst thing that happened? They cut you after 3 years, then you're a free agent, which is what you want to be anyway.
Yep.
So I don't even get it. But I would be understanding if he didn't want to play at less than 100% and or make things worse before he's trying to get life-altering financial security. I'd be understanding.
Let's go to America's team. Let's go to the Jacksonville Jaguars here, dude. So they're going to be hosting the Chargers. They are home underdogs somehow. Trevor versus Justin. I loved your tweet the other day calling the greatest hair matchup possibly in NFL history here. It's a tight spread, again, on the DK Sportsbook. When should I book my trip to Kansas City?
By the way, I didn't cut my hair the entire 2004 season. And it still wasn't even close to those guys' hair. It was maybe coming out of the back of my helmet a little bit. That is those guys that made a life decision to focus on their hair. That is not easy to do, to get it to go that long. Feels like it'd be really hard to manage. Like I watch what my wife has to do with her hair.
Yeah.
No, thank you, dude.
What year?
No chance.
What team were you?
Like,
What team were you on that
I
year?
don't get why you're doing that, but whatever. That's to each their own. No, you should not book your flight to Kansas City. First of all, you know how it works, right? Like if the Dolphins somehow won,
Oh, wait, I
or
love
the
this.
Ravens somehow won, you wouldn't actually be going to Kansas City.
True, the Jags.
You'd have to call the airline or whatever and get a credit to go somewhere else. So definitely don't book your flight today for that reason. That would not be very smart. And then in terms of the Chargers game, I'm pumped up about that Saturday night. You know, I don't know if you listen, you should, to the Even Money Betting podcast, but my co-host Steve Fezzik loves your squad.
Yeah.
Loves the Jags.
Yeah.
He said, listen, the Chargers just had to fly to Denver in the altitude. You got Mike Williams and Bosa banged up. You don't rest your guys. You come back to California. Now on a short week, they got to fly all the way to Jacksonville, play the Jags. He loves the Jags. I do not. I do not love the Jags.
Why?
I mean, I love the Jags as a team, and I love Doug Peterson, and I love Emerson. But in this game, I think the Chargers are going to win the game. I think they are the more talented team. I think they have better players. I think they're favored for a reason. And I think the Jaguars won their Super Bowl over the last 5 years last Saturday night by beating the Titans, winning the division. Everybody erupted. Everybody went nuts in Duval County for that night. I think it's the Chargers' time. Give me the Chargers laying the points.
I think Giants-Vikings may be the best chance for a road upset, Ross. New York taking them to the limit back in Week 16. Which side comes out on top Sunday afternoon?
Totally agree. Took the Giants and the points on the Even Money podcast. This is a field goal game either way. We just watched it.
Yeah.
The Vikings kicker made a 61-yard field goal. It's field goal game either way. So give me the G-men and the 3 points. I win if they win. I win if they lose by 1 or 2. If they lose by a field goal in overtime, very possible. It's a push. Giants +3 is the way to go there.
Okay, so we also have 2.5-point spread. We have a 2.5-point underdog at home on Monday night with the Bucks hosting Dallas. What are your expectations on Monday night for Tom Brady? Does vintage TB12 show up and show out?
I think he plays well, and they definitely protected him better in that last game that he really played the whole time against Carolina. That was encouraging, I would say, especially going against the Cowboys pass rush. I took the Bucks earlier in the week when they were up to +3. At +2.5, I feel like they're kind of a better teaser leg to go up to 8.5 maybe, but then you got to figure out who you're going to pair it with. And a lot of these lines have changed. You know what you do? You pair it with the Bengals down to -2.5. I'm giving out money on your show,
yes.
Emerson. Bucks up to 8.5. Bengals down to 2.5. 2-team, 6-point teaser. You're welcome, America.
Speaking of that, back to America's team. Let's talk fantasy here, dude. Fantasy perspective. Which game has you jazzed up the most? Because I immediately go to Chargers Jags because you got a pair of 4,000-yard passers here, man.
No question. Yep. I anticipated this question, as
yes.
I often do. And I wrote Chargers versus Jags. I think those long-haired, big-arm quarterbacks are going to light up the scoreboard. So there you go. I think it's a shootout with Lawrence and Herbert, and I think it's a lot of fun.
I do too. Away from the games, though, a lot going on. A lot going on with coaches getting fired, rumors of who the hell the next guy's going to be here, Ross. What's been the biggest story or surprise on the coaching front to you? I know you've been talking a lot about this on your podcasts.
I don't know if it's the biggest surprise, but probably the Cardinals firing Kingsbury a year after giving him an extension through 2027.
Yeah.
You know, I talk to a lot of coaches, okay? And they'll tell you privately, if you're going to get fired, you might as well get fired early.
Yeah.
You might as well get fired after the first year. Kingsbury is supposed to get $30 million over like the next 3 or 4 years. I mean, He could be like that song, I took a pill in Ibiza.
Oh, yeah.
To show a VGI was cool. You know what I'm talking about? Was that Mike Posner?
I love it. I love it. You're great on the workout playlist.
I can totally see Kingsbury taking a pill in Ibiza with his $30 million. Boom. I can't believe they let me say stuff like this. I can't believe I even get paid. Like, this is crazy.
Look at this, man. You get to spend time with me every week. It doesn't get any better than that. Hey, because I saw you tweet it. Why are owners in such a hurry to give coaches extensions?
No idea. Nobody's giving me a good answer for that. You know, number one, there are offsets in the contract. So if you got a job somewhere else, then that money gets offset. And I think sometimes they just get excited and they want to show like continuity. Maybe Kyler Murray wanted his coach extended before he did his deal. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't extend a coach till he had maybe 1 year left on his deal. When's the last time a coach was like a free agent and you're like, oh no, we can't get him signed to a contract? Never. It happens never.
Never. All right, playoffs again. Kicking off in 2 days. We got 2 more sleeps here. The Super Bowl matchup. Who is it going to be, Ross Tucker?
There are only 5 teams I can envision in the Super Bowl, right? Like I close your eyes with me and think about the Super Bowl. It's only either the Niners or the Eagles in the NFC or the Chiefs, Bills, or Bengals in the AFC. I'm a big path guy, okay? Give me the teams with the easiest path. Give me the Eagles. Okay. Give me the Chiefs.
All right.
It might not happen, but I still think it's the most likely. They don't even have to play a game this weekend. They already won. They're going to be sitting on their couch like you and me, and they already won their game. And they're playing next weekend at home. Chiefs, Birds.
All right, if it's Chiefs-Bills in the AFC title game, who does a neutral site benefit more? Which side?
Well, I guess the Bills, because otherwise the game would be in Kansas City because they're the number 1 seed. So I guess the Bills, although I think it's a big edge for both of them to not have to play at the other team's stadium.
Yep.
On the one hand, it's the Bills, because they're not the number 1 seed. On the other hand, it's the Chiefs because I don't think they want any part of going to Buffalo, bro. I don't think Buffalo AFC Championship game, I don't think the Chiefs want that smoke. That place would be bonkers.
Yeah, it would be. Again, Bills, favorite team you played for in your career. I remember everything you tell me. I love you, Ross Tucker. Thanks so much, dude. We'll talk to you next week. Coming up next, Trevor Lawrence, baby. Is he a must roster against LA, a team he lit up for more than 25 DK fantasy points back in week 3? Steve and Jules help you set your $1 million making lineups next. Millie makers everywhere. You'll find 2 of them this wild card weekend cooking in the DraftKings lobby right meow. We haven't even mentioned the Monday Night Football Showdown Millie Maker that will be available for the Cowboys and Bucks. DraftKings contributors, Steve Buchanan, hello, young man. Julian Edlow on the horn with us as well. Let's grab some DFS plays from you two just for this weekend's pair of Millie makers here. So 2-game Saturday slate. Most expensive quarterback, Justin Herbert, $6,600. So Steve, that should open up little bit of financial flexibility, maybe working some other big name, big salary guys. Give me one dude who absolutely needs to be in people's lineups.
Yeah, I mean, Christian McCaffrey going up against the Seahawks is obviously going to be a huge spot there. The Seahawks have been one of the worst run defenses that's really left in the playoffs at this point. We just saw McCaffrey play them not too long ago. 32 touches in that game, 138 total yards, a touchdown, 28.8 DraftKings fantasy points. That's the type of production you're going to be looking for on these slates. But that being said, he's also going to be an extremely popular option as well. So do you want to kind of eat the chalk at that point there at 8,500? Because we talked about how some of these quarterbacks really aren't all that expensive. So if you don't mind eating the chalk on that, McCaffrey is definitely going to be that guy.
All right, Jules, what about you, man? Steve going right to the top of the board. Where are you going here?
Yeah, I mean, another guy that's near the top of the board, but on 2-game slates, the pickings are slim. I'll go with Keenan Allen for $7,000. He did not play in the regular season game against the Jags, and now we have Mike Williams dinged up. We'll see what his status is. It's a great matchup. The way you attack this Jaguars defense is the secondary, and Herbert's going to go to his guys that he didn't have throughout the season, and Keenan Allen was one of those guys at times. He has double-digit targets in 4 of his last 6, 3 of those games, 14 targets, 100-plus yards in 2 of his last 3. He caught 2 touchdowns in the season finale against Denver. This seems like a spot, particularly if Mike Williams is out, that Herbert should be feeding Allen.
Yeah, and he's drawn an average of 2 red zone targets per game over his past 5 as well. Could definitely lead everybody in scoring in that one. Contrarian play now here, Jules. Who's a potentially low rostered player you can see being the difference here in a winning lineup on Saturday?
Yeah, I'm going to pivot off of Steve and go to Elijah Mitchell out of the San Francisco 49ers backfield. Early in the week, I was high on Christian McCaffrey, and we talked about his rushing prop on the Unreasonable Odds podcast. However, when Mitchell is in there, which hasn't been much, he can get a decent workload. He was hurt twice during the regular season. He played week 1, and then he was in again weeks 10 through 12, out again, and then played week 18 against Arizona, had 5 carries for 55 yards and 2 touchdowns. Every game, his rushing prop on DK Sportsbook is 36.5. I like the over on that. He's gone over it every game he's played this season, besides the one under. He hit 35 against New Orleans. I think this could be more of a timeshare than we want to admit, especially if this game gets out of hand. We're close to a double-digit spread. Mitchell could get more carries as the game goes on, and it's a really good matchup against Seattle. So I think Elijah Mitchell, from a prop standpoint and for $4,700 on this slate, is a good pivot off CMC, who will be a popular play.
Okay, what direction do you want to go in here?
I mean, $4,700 is cheap.
It
You know
is
what else
cheap.
is cheap? $2,500.
Whoa, who the hell's $2,500?
That's when you go with Colby Parkinson of Seattle in a positive game script for the Seahawks. You're probably playing from behind against the 49ers here. You look at the usage for Parkinson over the past couple of weeks. He's kind of slid into that tight end 1 role over Noah Fant. Last 3 weeks, 14 targets, made 10 catches, 128 yards, and a touchdown over that span. And if you look at the usage last week against the Rams, he played on 79% of the snaps, which was more than Noah Fant, who was at 64%. So now you're getting potentially somebody who's moved into that tight end 1 role. Only 2,500 in a game script where Julian just mentioned here, you know, the 49ers are almost double-digit favorites in this game. Well, that means if that's going to play by that type of game, we're going to see a lot of passing here from the Seahawks. So getting Parkinson in that role, $2,500, literally the stone minimum for any positional player. I think that's where you can get contrarian.
We've got some heavy hitters under center as we move to the Sunday slate here. Bukes, got to go Allen, you got to go Burrow. Would you recommend another quarterback here?
I mean, the problem is like those are going to be the 2 most popular guys there, right? So
100%.
You have to kind of really differentiate yourself from that. If you want to go in a different direction, I wouldn't blame you here at any point, but I think that going with one of those guys is totally fine. But at that being said, you know, you got Daniel Jones going against the Vikings, a team that definitely hasn't been strong defensively. That could be a way to kind of differentiate your lineup too. And he's been pretty well over these past, we'll say 4 or 5 weeks, over the past month coming into the playoffs. So I think Daniel Jones is definitely somebody you can take a look at here. Pretty low salary. You're going to get really good ownership on him because people are obviously going to gravitate to those big names like a Josh Allen or Joe Burrow. For as good as Joe Burrow has been, though, the Ravens have done a pretty good job at keeping him under control. It's really been like Joe Mixon in the run game that has found a lot of success against the Ravens. We could see more of that in this game as well, especially because the Bengals now are close to 9-point favorites in this game against the Ravens. I think Daniel Jones is going to be a good under-owned spot to go up against the Vikings, what could end up being a shootout.
I mean, Jules, quarterback on the other side there, Kirk Cousins, had nearly 25 DraftKings fantasy points in their last matchup, regular season matchup with the Giants.
Yeah, Cousins is fine. We might see some stacks with him and Justin Jefferson, which would always be popular. But I do agree with Steve. I think if you're going outside of those top two guys, it is Daniel Jones for me against that Vikings defense that ranks 28th in terms of DraftKings points allowed to the quarterback position. That was Daniel Jones's fourth highest scoring game fantasy-wise of the regular season when he was at Minnesota. It's a good game environment for him. So I think that's the guy. But if I'm picking between the top two, as much as I know Steve and I both love the Bengals in this spot, it's not necessarily like an over-the-top fantasy spot for Joe Burrow. So I do side with Josh Allen, who had almost 40 DraftKings points in the home game against Miami just a few weeks ago. I like what Josh Allen can do with his legs in that matchup, too. He had 10 carries for 77 yards against the Dolphins, who have not been good against mobile quarterbacks this season. So Allen would be the guy between the top two, and if you want to pay down, it would be Daniel Jones.
All right, Jules, Josh Allen seems like a pretty good dude to stack with maybe some of his weapons here on just like a 3-game slate. What is your stacking strategy here on Sunday? Is it like a must?
Yeah, well, even if I was going to say it's not a must, it's almost hard on a 2- and 3-game slate not to stack a guy with your quarterback. So it's like, I'm not going to play Josh Allen and then play Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Tyreek Hill. So even if you want to be different and not play a Stephon Diggs, who only had 10.7 DraftKings points in that recent matchup against Miami, you still have to go to a guy like a Gabe Davis, who has big play potential, and the Dolphins defense lets up a lot of big plays to receivers. So it's almost impossible not to stack, whether you're playing Burrow, Allen, Cousins, anybody. But if you do want to go with like a game script stack, you could, if you're playing Allen, pick between Diggs and Davis, and then you can get a guy like Tyreek Hill or a Jalen Waddle in there on the Miami side if you wanted to.
Yeah, Steve, do you like that strategy? Like, how do you differentiate yourself when it comes to stacking here? Because as Jules says, it's tough to avoid on such a small slate.
No, for sure, too, and that's why you got to look at some of these secondary pass schedules. Like, if you're going to be using Kirk Cousins, you maybe go with Adam Thielen, and then maybe go with Darius Slayton on the other side, do a little bit of a game stack here. But it's really hard to kind of differentiate so much when you only have these 2 or 3 game slates here. So you really have to try to get somewhat creative here. Like, you could even do something like, if you were going to use Daniel Jones, maybe you can go with somebody like, Bellinger, who's been someone who, at the tight end position that's been getting a lot of targets too as well. So you really got to get creative. Some of these lineups you're going to make, if you're trying to differentiate yourself, are going to look gross. They're going to look ugly. We're going to hit submit in this one here. But on these small slates, sometimes you have to just eat the chalk here and then maybe go a little bit more contrarian at some of these other positions.
All right, we're going to keep our football talk going coming up after this break. You two are done. We appreciate the help.
Oh, thanks. Good.
Yeah. See you later. Bye, Steve. We're going to grab some best bets, including some of the top player props available on the DK Sportsbook ahead of Wild Card Weekend. Jeff and Pierce join us right after the break. It's truly been a wild card Thursday here on the Sweat. We've done the Ross Tucker thing. We've done the Millie Maker thing. And now it's time to do that best bet thing you like with Pierce Dietrich and Jeff Ulrich. Good to have you all here. We've got player markets now available on the DK Sportsbook, guys. What's a Saturday player prop that you like, Jeff Ulrich?
Let's go Trevor Lawrence, Emerson. Under 35.5 pass attempts. So,
Okay.
again, I'm not necessarily saying Trevor Lawrence is having a bad game, so calm yourself down over there. But I like this prop. One thing that we know about the Chargers, bad rush defense. Teams have really been taking advantage of that. This year, teams against the Chargers average only 29.7 pass attempts per game. That number went down later in the season, too. What do we have here with the Jaguars? You have Travis Etienne coming off a 9-touch game. He's going to be revved up, nice and fresh. You've also seen Trevor Lawrence going with more designed runs for him towards the back half of the year as well. I just don't think that the Jaguars are going to be that interested in passing the ball a ton, at least early on. And that's really going to lead to just a few less pass attempts for Trevor Lawrence here. So perfect setup for Travis Etienne. It doesn't mean that Trevor Lawrence can't be efficient or really have a big game, but man, I think this is a massive number and a very, very good underspot at 35.5 on his pass attempts.
Yeah, with the Chargers giving up nearly 150 yards a game on average, Jeff, I'm fairly confident the Jags will have more than 19 yards rushing this week. What's a player prop you like here, Pierce?
George Kittle over 42.5 receiving yards. Am I missing something?
Yeah.
I don't know if I am the mark in this situation. I don't think I am. George Kittle is a pretty good tight end. The San Francisco offense has really come to life under Purdy. Purdy has a much better arm than Jimmy Garoppolo, can make passes that Garoppolo could not make, and it increases the upside of Kittle, who is a volatile player. We've seen him have big games and then have no-show games, but if you just go back to the last matchup against Seattle, he hit the big play, and we know that Kittle is an absolute yards after the catch monster. You just got to get the ball to him, which Garoppolo struggled to do. Purdy's not going to struggle there, and Kittle will be open because defenses, good defenses, let alone Seattle's defense, are going to struggle to guard CMC wherever he is on the field, and all of the other receivers. This opens up Kittle. 42.5 seems just incredibly low. Take the over.
Yeah, Jeff, we talked a little bit about that yesterday, too, how much Kittle just absolutely crushes the Seahawks. Let's stick with player props here. Let's go to the 3-game Sunday slate. Give me one that you like, Pierce.
Did you say 3-game Sunday slate or freaking Sunday slate? Because we've got the super freak, Richie James. Not a day goes by that we don't mention him on this show. Not getting enough love, not getting enough attention. James is a great play in DFS at a super low price, but you got to take the over on James's receiving total. He's facing a Minnesota team that struggles against slot receivers. Second worst against slot receivers, especially when it comes to allowing receptions and allowing yards. And that's what the Giants do. Brian Dable has won a bunch of games for this team by doing what they can do, and which is, hey, Daniel Jones, don't ask him to throw the ball downfield. Don't ask too much. Just hit the ball with the slot receiver. We saw that with Wan'Dale Robinson earlier this season. James, out of nowhere, takes over the position and is routinely catching almost 100 receiving yards per game, flirting with 10 receptions per game. It's an easy spot. Take the over on the James total.
Yeah, dude, played well against the Vikings back in Week 16. Which player prop you like on Sunday Fun Day, Ulrich?
Yeah, look, I mean, Richie James Jr., 75 or more yards, plus 250 on the alt line. I'm going to go to the other side of this game and target another sort of underrated wide receiver right now. I think that KJ Osborne is actually a very, very nice target to take some props on to the over side as well here. 3.5 receptions, plus 105. I'll take the over on that. What did we see in this first game between the Giants and the Vikings? Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson kind of just clowning this secondary. And like for good reason. This secondary is very gettable on the Giants. But KJ Osborne coming on towards the end of the year, and I think one thing you'll see is some kind of adjustment just to slow Justin Jefferson down a little bit, which should leave Osborne very wide open. I think he's a bigger part of this offense than people realize. And he's a very good receiver. So much like Richie James on the other side, like Osborne is a player here for DFS and even for alt line bettings here. You can get KJ Osborne at 75 plus yards, plus 330. This is a player I wouldn't mind taking a part of here. I think this game is really ripe for like single game parlays as well. You can get really nice odds on, kind of secondary players like KJ Osborne and Richie James Jr., who are probably going to play pivotal roles here. So really looking to maybe jam in some big yardage props and some touchdowns for this one. Expecting a pretty back and forth affair and some points. So just like Richie James on the other side, I like KJ Osborne as well.
Jeff, when we're talking game bet here on Sunday, which one is your favorite? We've got some big spreads on the board. It's 13-point spread. Bills favored heavily at home against the Dolphins, and also the Bengals 8.5 at home. They are laying against the Ravens.
Look, much like when Hulk Hogan, marched into the WCW and revealed he was a part of the NWO. I'm gonna have to take off the yellow bandana. I'm going with the Vikings this week. We're gonna go Vikings -3 here. Ooh. Yeah, everyone's out on this team. Everyone's pick this week, their upset pick. Your dad's upset pick, your grandpa's upset pick. It's the Giants. The Giants aren't fooling anyone. They're +3 now. The last time these two teams played, they opened at +5.5 and closed at +3. There's no more value here. I mean, this line is -3. What is the team who has been playing in hardened situations all year? The Vikings. They set the record for most one-possession wins this year at 11. If there's ever a team that's ready for a one-game elimination scenario, it is Minnesota. And I am just not convinced this Giants team is really that good. I mentioned their secondary issues. If they don't get Kirk Cousins, they don't get pressure on Kirk Cousins in this game, they're going to get eaten alive. They were very lucky against the Commanders to come out with a tie and a win there. Really got beaten up by their wide receivers. And Minnesota is just on another level in that regard. So if the Vikings can slow down Saquon Barkley a little, and they did in the first game, and they have a pretty solid rush defense, to be honest, I think that the Vikings can cover here, maybe even easily. So give me the Vikings to cover at home. I think that they're good for at least one win, and they're certainly going to be up for this game after being talked down by the media, basically the entire year.
Well, Pierce, the Giants covered in nearly 86% of their games on the road, which is best in the NFL. What game bet do you like on Sunday?
Well, in that 1997 bash at the beach where Hulk Hogan turned heel and started the NWO, he was joined by Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. And I, too, am going to join the NWO along with Jeff Ulrich and take the Vikings and lay the points. This team could have been a #1 seed, and they're facing a Giants team that really has no business being in the playoffs at all. I know people love to doubt the Vikings, but we also have to doubt the Giants. As Jeff mentioned, the Giants defense isn't that good, and the Vikings offense is very good. Yeah, the Vikings defense struggles, but so does the Giants defense, and the Vikings have an actual offense. I could very easily see this game turning into a race and the Vikings just getting out really early, really hot, really fast. That forces the Giants into a one-dimensional passing scheme. Dable and the Giants don't have much to work with. Then you put them in a one-dimensional system. They are really in a bad hole, in a bad spot. I think this number's too low. Give me the Vikings, lay the 3.
Speaking of 3, Kirk Cousins 1-3 in the playoffs. This will be his first home start for the Vikings in the postseason here. Best bet, prop or game for Monday night's Dallas at Tampa Bay matchup. Pierce.
Dallas, lay the points. You're giving way too much respect to Tampa. This is a sub-500 team. If you look at Brady's numbers this season, they're pretty miserable. You compare them to last year, and if you adjust for the pass attempts, he's basically down 1,000 yards passing. He's down 20 passing touchdowns. It's not very good. And meanwhile, though, he's thrown the ball more than any quarterback in football this season. It is crazy how much they pass and how little they're getting from him. His yards per pass attempt is the lowest of his career. His quarterback rating is around the number that got him thrown out or run out of town in New England. Take the under on his touchdown total, take the under on his yards total, and lay the points with Dallas.
I mean, you mentioned how some of his numbers have just looked miserable. Brady himself has looked pretty miserable at times this season. Jeff, what's your bet on the DK Sportsbook for Monday night's matchup between the Bucs and Cowboys?
I mean, I too am thinking like the Cowboys at -2.5 might be the most ridiculous line of the week. It just feels like a Brady line, but I'm going to go with some player props here because Pierce already talked about the Cowboys. Dalton Schultz, if you're bullish on the Cowboys, I think Dalton Schultz is a great touchdown bet. I usually don't touch this market, but +210 I think is very fair here. Going up against the Tampa Bay squad, this is some of the tight ends that Tampa Bay has allowed touchdown receptions to. Michael Pruitt, Taysom Hill. We're talking like backup tight ends. Dalton Schultz is almost like the secondary receiver here for Dallas. Caught 2 touchdowns a couple games ago. Certainly will get some looks here against the weak, interior, pass coverage defense of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I think you can not only go single touchdown, anytime touchdown here, but I would take a look at Dalton Schultz at +1,600 for 2 or more touchdowns here. I think it's a very good matchup. I think Dallas is going to be in the red zone quite a bit here. Everyone's kind of written off the Cowboys because they lost to the Commanders. there's just no incentive for the starters to play hard in that game. What we've seen from Dallas this year as well, they really bounced back after wins. So like Pierce, I too am on the Cowboys here. I think this one could be maybe like a just not even really that exciting. And I think it's a good spot for a guy like Dalton Schultz to find the end zone. So plus 210 anytime, plus 1,600, 2 more touchdowns for Dalton Schultz.
Gentlemen, enough is enough. I love you both. But coming up next, we are lacing up the skates, baby. Tage Thompson selected to his first All-Star game. However, should you select him tonight on a 12-game slate? Our panel will answer that hard-hitting question right after this. How about a healthy dose of pasta? Highest priced player on the slate tonight, 12-game slates around the NHL on DraftKings. Some heavy hitters on your screen. Let's see which ones make the most sense to stuff into your money-making lineup. NHL.com's Pete Jensen, and we also got AJ Schultz in the house, along with his riveting RotoWire buddy, Mr. Paul Bruno. Best center to roster for DFS here, Pete. We have entered the age of Tage in Buffalo, who's paying up for the third highest priced player tonight. Are you, Pete? Can't hear you, dude. You're on mute. Don't panic. I'll go to AJ. Go ahead. We'll come back to you, Pete.
No worries, guys. So for me, in terms of the center position, we haven't heard yet whether or not Austin Matthews is going to go tonight. But if he isn't playing, I think you absolutely have to consider rostering John Tavares at 6,500 here. You could probably justify using Tavares either way with that matchup against Detroit. It's a good spot to be in, but I think especially without Matthews in the lineup, Tavares is going to get increased responsibilities that come with being the first line center and a bigger focal point on that power play. So you probably should consider it either way, but especially if Matthews isn't playing again tonight.
All right, Paul, what do you want here, dude?
Well, I like that call because JT's got 5 goals and 3 helpers in his last 4 games, but I got a whole host of other options. Even going right to the top, McKinnon is back in rolling form. 3 goals, 2 assists in his last 4 games, gets the lowly Blackhawks. Big time mismatch. That's why he costs so much. Jack Eichel back in the lineup for Vegas against Florida, a team that gives up a lot of goals. 3 points in his last 2 games since his return, now playing with Marchessault and Smith on that top line. And then how can you not take Patrice Bergeron versus Seattle? $7,000 the price tag, 3 goals, 4 helpers in his last 8. Can anybody stop the Bruins? I don't know, but Seattle's up next, and I still like that matchup for the hometown team.
Okay, AJ, now we go to top winger, and again, we mentioned him coming into this segment, $9,600, David Pastrnak. How high up on the board are you going to go here in the wings and things department?
Personally, I'm going to go a little cheaper, not all the way down, but the Lightning power play has been the primary source of offense for the Bolts lately. with all 5 guys leading the point production on that team over the last month of January here. So to that end, the cheapest of the 5 on that group there is Brandon Hagel at 6,200. That's severely cheaper than what you're going to get with Pasta. He's getting all kinds of production. The Canucks, of course, have been leaking goals of late due to some poor net minding. So I'd consider stacking some of the bolts tonight, and you can start that with Brandon Hagel.
All right, Paul, where do you sit here at wing? Can we not ignore Forsberg, who's been hot since returning from Christmas? He's got 8 goals and 4 apples in 8 games, dude. He saves some cash.
Definitely, but on the second of back-to-backs, a little dicey for me. I look instead, I mean, talking about another guy who's on second of back-to-backs, Mitch Marner on a 6-game point streak too, with 9 points in that stretch. But more impressive to me are the matchups for Marchand against Seattle, $7,300 for the Bruin juggernaut, 4 goals, 5 helpers in his last 5 games. And then Mark Stone against that Florida club that's leaking goals against. Vegas will roll over them tonight. He had a 7-game point streak snapped his last time out. He went 13 points in that stretch. Ready to start another one this evening, I think.
Hey, Pete, who would you say is the best winger to have in your lineup tonight on this 12-game slate?
I'll keep it simple. I'll go Max Pacioretty for the Carolina Hurricanes. The shot volume has been there ever since he came back from injury, the Achilles thing. He looks good as new, 13 shots on goal in his first 3 games of the season, including 3 goals, playing on the top line with Sebastian Aho, kind of going to give that Hurricanes team a kickstart that they needed to get to the end of the day, where I think we all expect them to be a Stanley Cup contender. So I'll go with Pacioretty. They got him for nothing in the offseason, and he could mean everything for this team when it's all said and done.
Paul, back on the blue line, which defenseman are you looking to roster tonight?
Cale Makar is interesting at the high end, $7,600 for that matchup against Chicago. He's got 8 points in his last 6 games, and you can count on him to get 25 minutes of ice time against that poor team. Lots of scoring chances there. Moritz Seider's coming off a 4-assist game, gets the Leafs on the second of back-to-backs, and maybe he's ready to go on a bit of a roll. So I might like him for $4,800. And then finally, I look at Brett Burns for Carolina. I think they have a real mismatch there tonight against Columbus. He's priced at $6,700, was blanked in his last 3 games, so he's ready to break out, considering he got 5 points in his previous 4 outings.
Yeah, 3-game point streak there for Makar right now. Pete, you going high end, low end here for your defenseman?
Somewhere in the middle. I'll go with Keandre Miller of the New York Rangers. I love the way this guy's trending. 6 points during a 4-game point streak. Great category coverage with the blocked shots. And if you just watch him, end-to-end action, he's like a highlight reel, a human highlight reel. And he's only getting started. He's still very young. You can make the argument that the Rangers with Adam Fox and Keandre Miller have maybe the best 1-2 punch of 23 and under defensemen in the entire league. I don't think you could argue against that. Maybe if you want to say Dahlin and Power, but that's about it in terms of young defenseman duos for the years to come. And yeah, I just think that, you know, his performance and his usage, he's playing 6 straight games with at least 20 minutes, and he's got 12 points in his past 13 games. He's the complete package right now, and he's going to be even better 2 or 3 years from now.
Kind of explains why I see his name in a lot of recent articles here on NHL.com. All right, AJ, who's your defenseman tonight?
Well, first, I kind of want to listen to Pete continue saying good things about the University of Wisconsin product, Keandre Miller.
Of course.
I'll listen to that all day. I'm going to stick with the Rangers here and actually go with Adam Fox, who he mentioned. Fox is just 6,100. You compare that to Roman Josi at 87, makes him a really good value. Look, in the month of January, only one defenseman has had more shots on goal than Adam Fox. So he should have a high volume. Clearly, neither Pete nor I is scared off about the fact that they're playing Dallas tonight. I think with them having maybe a weaker matchup compared to some of the other a tougher matchup rather than some of the other blue liners out there, it's just going to drop the utilization numbers for both those guys. And I think they're both in play tonight.
Pete, last one here. Save us money, but give us a dude who's going to deliver in the points department and your value play tonight.
For a value play, I'll look at the Seattle Kraken. I think they have an opportunity here. They're arguably the hottest team in the league. They have a chance to upset the Bruins. They have a chance to end the Bruins' home point streak, which is at 19-0-3, unbelievable stretch to start the season. But you would expect a regulation loss at some point. And with those Kraken guys, they have like 10 different guys on their roster over 20 points on the season, which is unthinkable. Their scoring depth is insane. I would look at Daniel Sprong, who's been very productive regardless of lineup placement. And same for Eli Tolvanen. This guy's playing on the power play since being claimed from Nashville. Those are two guys, whether Sprong or Tolvanen fits your price point in DFS. Try to get one of them, especially if you're predicting that the Kraken could pull the big upset here.
Paul, who's atop your value play rankings tonight?
You know what? I'm going to surprise you, but I'm going to say Craig Smith of the Boston Bruins. He gets to move up with Marchand and Bergeron. This is strictly a ploy to increase this guy's trade value. He's not going to be there at the trade deadline, so it's a bit of a fast one the Bruins are pulling here. But watch this guy go on an offensive role. Who wouldn't with those two guys playing beside him? I also like Calle Jarnkrok in the Toronto matchup against Detroit. He lines up with Marner and Tavares, both those guys on heaters that we've talked about. So Jarnkrok, cheap value at $3,100. And then finally, Cole Perfetti goes up against Buffalo. Their goaltending has been a bit of a mess lately, and with Scheifele and Wheeler, he's got a good chance to pad some stats with $3,600 his price tag.
Yeah, Craig Smith's been in trade talk conversations like since back in August here. AJ, value play tonight, dude.
Well, more Wisconsin love coming from Paul this time. Another Badger, Craig Smith, was on my radar as well here to talk about. So I'm going to kind of pivot on the fly here. I don't hate the idea of using Nino Niederreiter tonight of Nashville. Comes in at just $4K for you, relatively cheap. I think the Predators have a good chance to roll over Montreal tonight. So it's kind of a spot choice there. Niederreiter goalless in his last 6 games, but he's got 4 helpers over that stretch and plenty of shots on goal, 18 shots on goal in those 6 contests. So I would imagine he's going to get one in the back of the net sooner rather than later. And going up against the lowly Habs is certainly a good chance for that.
I like you guys a lot. It's always a pleasure having all 3 of you here. I appreciate your work today. We have one more break to go. We have one more block to go. And you're about to enter the zone where Luca lands among our panel's best DFS plays. Maybe he's a sportsbook target tonight. Nobody knows except for Garion and Chinmay, and they'll join us next. All right, 6-game slate on, or around the association, I should say, rather, tonight. Chinmay is here. Garion is here. This is NBA zone coverage. So we're going to have Chinmay tackle the fantasy side on DraftKings for this segment. Garion, you're on DK Sportsbook duty. So lots of star power here on the slate. Chinmay, who's the best play in DFS to build your lineups around?
I mean, you might as well pay up all the way for Luka Doncic, right? 12.8K is a big number, but we've seen Doncic's performances of late. He had, over 100 DK fantasy points in that comeback win over the Knicks, but he's also consistently been up there, hovering around that 70-80 mark over the last few games, and he's going to be able to do everything that you want out of a star player. The points, the assists, rebounds. He's had a couple steals here and there. He's going to be able to do everything. So if you want a guaranteed stat stuffer, Doncic is a play. LeBron James should be coming back as well. That's, a couple K less than Doncic, another guy who's going to be filling up the stat sheet. The Lakers don't really have anybody else who's going to be doing a lot of damage for them. If you want to save a little bit of cash here, Jimmy Butler just had a monster game against the Thunder. The Heat have a few injuries as well, with Tyler Hero and Kyle Lowry expected to sit out again. Jimmy Butler could have another big game here against the Bucks, who might be resting some guys on the second night of a back-to-back, that's a guy who you could maybe save some money on.
And beware sending the Heat to the line, man, after they made all 43 throws the other night in a row. That's a new NBA record. So, Gare Bear, hook me up with a player prop you like from maybe one of these star players tonight.
Yeah, I believe he's $10,300 on tonight's slate. I'm going to go with Pascal Siakam over 25.5 points. This mostly has to do with matchup. I mean, Siakam in his own right has been very, very good this season. He's hit this over in 9 of his last 12 games, but it's the matchup tonight. The Hornets have been absolutely putrid against generally it's opposing centers, but the Raptors don't really have a center. I think Pascal Siakam is kind of the closest thing they have to that in their starting lineup. So he sort of fits that mold if you squint on this particular slate. But in their last 10 games, the Hornets are not only bottom 10 in the league in defensive rating, bottom 10 in the league in points in the paint allowed to their opponents per game. They're also second in pace. So just a lot of high quality possessions for the offenses that go up against this Hornets team. The Raptors just scored 132 points against the Hornets on Tuesday. Siakam had 28 in that game. I think he goes over this number for the 10th time in his last 13.
He was an integral part in that victory. That was a game that you were at, Gare Bear. You were up
Told you I was doing research, Emerson. I told you.
You were up on a school night, and we appreciate it. On the other end, good DFS value play this evening, Chinmay. Who's your guy?
Well, I'm sticking with that Hornets-Raptors game that Gary mentioned. Jalen McDaniels coming on really strong here. He's been a trade target as most recently reported. The Phoenix Suns were among the teams interested in acquiring McDaniels. He's had 5 straight games hovering around that 30 DK fantasy point mark. Coming in at 5,300 is still tremendous value. He was under 5K before this most recent stretch. And Gordon Hayward is listed as doubtful again with a hamstring injury. So it looks like McDaniels is going to get the start or at least get heavy minutes again in what should be a high-scoring game. We know the Hornets can't defend, so they're going to have to score a bunch to keep up in this one. I like McDaniels at this value.
Yeah, great floor there for a value play. How about some value on the DK Sportsbook, Gary, and a plus money bet you like? Any out there?
So I'm of two minds right now. I would say you could take a chance on the Bucks right now at plus money on the money line. I know we're all just waiting for the injury report. Will Giannis sit? Will Drew Holiday sit on the second night of a back-to-back? I might lean no. I mean, Holiday did sit the second night of their last back-to-back, but he had just returned from injury and a conditioning spell. Like, I think that really made sense on that particular night a week and a half ago. Giannis played the last time the Bucks had a back-to-back. He played in both games. So, you know, like Chinmay said, Kyle Lowry's already been ruled out. Tyler Hero's already been ruled out. If we find out that Giannis is playing in this game, this line is going to swing dramatically in the Bucks' direction, even with the Bucks being on the road. So I would maybe take a shot at that now. A safer plus money line bet I like tonight is just the Lakers. You know, we LeBron James, it seems like he's going to return for this game. He's probable. Right now the Lakers are plus 125 on the money line. This game's in Los Angeles. I mean, Dallas has been terrible on the road so far this season. They are 7-20 ATS, their last 27 games on the road. They're 7-13 straight up this season on the road. They are a different team when they are away from Dallas. The Lakers have been much better the last 10, 15 games, and obviously they are much better when LeBron plays. So I think there's some value betting them on the money line.
Yeah, and Lakers winning 4 of their last 5 at home. You mentioned sitting here, Gary, and so Chinmay, of any of these games tonight have blowout potential, so you're maybe proceeding with caution a little bit, potentially rostering some of the big salary guys?
I think for the big salary players, you kind of have to look at the injury report before you look at the game itself. Embiid can be ruled questionable at literally any point during the day. Giannis can be listed questionable at any point during the day on the second night of a back-to-back. The Cavaliers-Blazers game is interesting. If Damian Lillard sits, the Blazers might not have the juice against Cleveland. But the NBA in general has been very unpredictable during the regular season. I mean, you talk about the Thunder Sixers, that's a 10-point spread right now on the DK Sportsbook, with the Thunder just dropped 150 on the Celtics recently. So anything can really happen in these games. And these teams, even though the records might not be as close, these teams are a lot closer than people think. So I don't know that you necessarily have to look at the matchup as much when considering DFS, I think it's more about the injury report and seeing who's going to get playing time, because that's going to have the biggest difference in this type of slate.
All right, last one here, Gary, and quickly, a spread you like to get covered tonight?
I'm going to take the Celtics as slight road favorites, only laying 3 points tonight in Brooklyn. No Kevin Durant, as we know. The Nets have been a much different team with Durant off the court this season. They have a negative net rating when he has been sidelined, whereas the Celtics 6-1 ATS their last 7 games against teams with a 600 or better winning percentage. They like making a statement against these good Eastern Conference teams.
Celtics 4-0-1 ATS their last 5 games playing on 0 days of rest, Gare Bear. All right, you two. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out with us. We appreciate it. We're back here in studio tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock Eastern time. We will see you then.